How's that? Okay. So we're going to get started here. Might be a couple more people joining, but we have a really good turnout. There's 179 participants so far. We're doing something a little bit different today. This is my first Let's Talk of 2023. Going back to a format that we had done a few years ago. I haven't done it since right before COVID, but we used to have these president's forums where we would allow people to submit questions, and I would answer those questions in a meeting like this. And so we're going back to that for this this Let's Talk, and we'll see how it works. But and I'll give some ground rules on it in a little bit. I wanted to start off with a little bit of a recap, kind of a review of 2022, just kind of an update on where we're at and closing out the year, and then take it from there. But by all accounts, we had a very successful year in 2022. It was, when you look at all the business metrics, it was a great year. So our overall sales topped 62 million. And I think just about every one of our markets, we met or exceeded our sales goals. So it was a really good year from a sales standpoint. That has carried over into 2023. Already year to date, we're at about 16.5 million in sales. So that strong top line focus and our strong sales numbers are continuing into 2023. From a revenue standpoint, we have not closed out 2022 yet. We're still working on that. We have to go through the process of closing out December. And we haven't done a December WIP yet. And so, but I can give you some kind of preliminary numbers. And for those of you who, this was not one of the questions that was asked, but I have been asked many times before, what is WIP? WIP stands for work in progress. And essentially, the reason why we do WIP is that we recognize revenue on an accrual basis, not on a cash basis. And so I'll try to explain that for you all so you can kind of have an understanding of how it works. But because we don't, bill our time and then get paid for those hours we bill, since that doesn't happen at the same time, we have to make adjustments to recognize what our actual revenue is. So I'll give you an example. So let's say in 1 month, we put $10,000 of labor on a project, but we decide not to bill that project that month for whatever reason. What we'll do when we go through the WIP process is if the project is tracking to finish on budget, then we can choose to recognize that $10,000 as real revenue and not take it as a hit. Even though we spent time on it, we didn't bill for it, we can still recognize that revenue. Likewise, if a client asks us to bill ahead on a project, let's say the client asks us to bill $10,000 on a project, but we haven't done the work yet, and we know we're going to do the work, we might hold that $10,000 back from the revenue statement. So it's a way of just truing up revenue with work effort. And it's something that we go through every month. And in order to do it, we have to finish up the billing for the previous month. So it usually takes some time before we're able to WIP the previous month. So we're about to go through that process for December. But if you factor in the preliminary numbers for December, again, 2022 is a very successful year from a revenue and profit standpoint. Our gross revenue was over 49 million, and the net revenue is over 42 million. And our profit on all that revenue is going to fall somewhere in the 2.6 million to 2.8 million range. It could even get higher than that, but we're not sure yet at this point until we go through that process of going through WIP for December. So hopefully that gives folks a little bit of an understanding of how we recognize revenue and how we come up with our numbers. And then of course, once we close out December, our independent accounting firm has to go through all of our books, all the numbers, and then certify the financial results. And that's what we get issued in April, just before our annual shareholders. So that's all on the horizon. One other area where we saw a lot of improvement in terms of business metrics is in our cash position. It has improved dramatically over the past few months. And cash was something that we, our experience with COVID and how it impacted our business was felt mostly on the cash side. We had a number of projects that went on hold, projects that were canceled, clients that were taking longer to pay. And then we had some internal issues in terms of how our invoicing was being handled that really put us in a poor cash position through all of 2021 and well into 2022. But we've pulled out of that. Really, there's basically three main reasons why we're in a better cash position today. One is that our accounting staff has been completely revamped. We have a whole new accounting crew in there, and those folks have just been killing it. They've done a great job of kind of sorting out the invoices that were in our system that were processed wrong, or we're not getting to the right people at our clients. And we've been able to untangle a lot of that. And again, thanks to our accounting folks, we're able to get the proposal or the invoices into the hands of the right people. We figured out all of our clients' accounting portals and processing our paperwork accordingly. And that's really helped out a lot in terms of improving cash flow. And secondly, we're working on having a more structured program in place to improve how we track and collect our accounts receivable. And so it's a work in progress, but there has been way more focus in ramping up the dialogue with our clients about our invoicing, about our outstanding receivables, and pushing them to pay in a more timely manner. And then lastly, major impact on our cash flow has been, so we had qualified for some federal tax credits, largely based on the COVID impact on the company in 2021 and into the first quarter of 2022. And so over a year ago, the IRS recognized these tax credits. So we had to account for the fact that we were going to be able to recognize those tax credits and get cash back from previous taxes paid. So we had to, when we closed the year end 2021, we had to account for that from an accounting standpoint, but the cash itself didn't come in from the IRS until January of this year. So that explains a lot of why we struggled with cash last year. But the combination of those three activities has really put us in a good cash position. We're kind of back to where we need to be. And so moving forward, we should be in much better shape when it comes to cash flow management. So like I said, from a business metrics standpoint, 2022 was an outstanding year. Other highlights from the year include continued growth within the company. We added roughly a net 50 people to the organization. As I mentioned, we greatly upgraded our accounting staff. We overhauled our HR staff, our IT group, and even our marketing business development. We've continued to bolster that group, adding people and continuing to mature into a 300-person company. So a lot of growth in 2022. We opened a new office in Philadelphia, and we also moved into new offices in several of our neighborhoods, including Orlando, Detroit, Columbus, and then here in Cleveland. And then on the services side, we continued to grow in many different areas. We bolstered our structural restoration practice through the acquisition of existing structures down in Cape Canaveral. And that's been a tremendous addition to the firm. So there's been a lot of exciting things that happened in 2022. And we recently published the strategic plan, as well as our organizational announcement, which talks about all the organizational changes we made this year, the promotions that were made. And I would encourage all of you to take some time to read through the plan, read through that organizational announcement for a lot more detail in terms of recap of 2022 and then what we're looking forward to in 2023. So with that, I wanted to get into the question and answers portion of this presentation. Again, our marketing folks sent out the link to the online survey where people could ask questions anonymously. And so there were a number of questions that were submitted. And so my plan is to get through all of those today. What we're going to do is I have Jennifer with me here in my office. She's going to be monitoring the chat function or the Q&A function in the webinar. And so as I go through the questions and my responses, if you have questions along the way, feel free to ask them using either the Q&A or the chat function. Is that right? Or do you want to use one of the other?
The Q&A.
Okay, so use the Q&A component of the webinar to ask your questions. When we get finished with the questions that have already been submitted, I'm going to open it up and let anybody ask any additional questions you have. And, I'll stay here as long as necessary to answer them all. But with that, I'll get into these. And, like I said, there were a lot of questions that were asked, and a number of them were very similar to each other. So I'm going to kind of combine those into more of a generic question. But so let's get started. So the first question was about our Groundhog Day celebration. We had a couple of questions around Groundhog Day and why do we celebrate it? Is it significant? And did we get any leads from our recent Groundhog Day party? So it's a good question. I think if you're new to the company, it probably, there's a lot of scratching your head of, why do we emphasize or celebrate Groundhog Day so much? It really goes back about 14 or 15 years. We were looking for a way to acknowledge and recognize and thank our clients. And, at the time, many firms would send out holiday cards or have events around the holidays to recognize their client base. And so, Jennifer came up with this idea to do something a little bit different. And so, we waited about a month after the holidays and we sent out Groundhog Day cards to our client base. And it really got a positive reaction. It was, a little bit of a kind of an eclectic, gesture on our part. But we found it, it got a lot of attention and people got a chuckle out of it and appreciated it. So after a couple of years, we decided to turn it more into a bigger event. And so I think it was 12 years ago, we started with our first Groundhog's Day party just here in Cleveland and invited our client base there. And again, had a tremendous turnout and a tremendous response. And each year that we had it, it got bigger and bigger. And it's hard for people to really appreciate it, but it's really become an industry event, especially here in town. And we've opened it up to parties in other offices. This year we had one in Detroit that was very well attended. I think we had about 50 people there.
Yeah.
About 50 people came to our Detroit Groundhog's Day party. And then here in Cleveland, in our new headquarters office, we had over 200 guests here. So again, it's a really tremendous event. It's people in the industry here in Cleveland look forward to it each year. It gets local press. We were in the latest Properties magazine up here, photos from our Groundhog's Day party. So it's really become a special event for the firm. I understand folks down south are probably like, what on earth are these people doing? But believe me, when you live up north and you have the long, cold winters, Groundhog's Day is kind of a thing. And it certainly has taken hold with our client base up here. So it's just a way to get everyone together, spend some time, not just talking about work, getting to know our clients better, build those relationships. And while I'm sure we do get leads that come out of these parties, it's more about building those relationships, growing our client base, and that leads to more opportunities and more work. And so it's something that we've become known for. We have our groundhogs all over the place. Jennifer does a great job getting them all dressed up in their outfits. Couple times our groundhogs have been kidnapped by some of our friendly clients, and they travel the world and they take pictures of our groundhog all over the place. So while it's kind of unusual, it's unique to Osborne, and it's just kind of a fun mascot for the company. Any questions about groundhogs?
Andy asked if we can send out the property stuff. We can look to do that.
Okay. Yes. So I'm not sure if people can hear Jennifer or not, but question was asked if we can send out the properties magazine feature, and we will do that. We'll at least get it on the bridge or send it out to everyone. Any other questions?
Not on ground.
Okay. Anything else you want to bring up?
The last couple you can maybe get through your questions, and I'll bring you.
Okay. All right. So the next question that was asked was, which offices will be moving or expanding, and what new offices are expected to open in 2023? So we just recently opened our Pittsburgh office. I was there a few weeks ago. It's in a really cool location, really nice views. We've got 2 folks there already, and we're looking to expand there in Pittsburgh. We are about ready to move our folks in Cape Canaveral into a new office space. That's under construction and about ready to open soon. And then we are expanding in Orlando and Tampa. Orlando might be just about finished, and in Tampa we're expanding there as well. So those are that's the current activity in terms of our current offices. If in 2023, most likely we will be opening an office in Jacksonville. We have 3 employees down there now, and so it just makes sense to have we have a major client, a couple major clients in Jacksonville, so it makes sense for us to open an office and have a physical presence there. Outside of that, I really don't know. There are no conversations about other locations that we would be opening offices, but certainly that could change as the year goes on. But as of right now, there's nothing on the books. Any other questions about office? Okay, next question. Has the company had any improvement with employee turnover? It's a good question. Historically, Osborne has always had a very low turnover rate. It's one thing that attracts people to the company. There's a lot of, lifelong Osborne employees once you get here, and to stay here. So, in looking, I got with Rachel and HR and kind of looking back on our HR data, like most companies, since COVID hit, we have had higher turnover rates than we had experienced in the past. And it wasn't unusual to Osborne, but we certainly weren't immune to, the great resignation or whatever you want to call it, where people were out looking for new opportunities. If you looked at our turnover rate just before COVID, in any given month, we were somewhere below 2%. Last year, it was closer to 3%, and we peaked at about 4% turnover in a couple of months. So that's pretty high. That's way higher than is comfortable from an operations and management standpoint. But it has definitely improved since that peak last summer. And in the last couple of months, we are back to under 1% in terms of employee turnover. So I hope that that's a permanent trend, and I'd like, it's much more comfortable when you feel that stability and you get to know your team and the folks you work with, and you build that camaraderie and you build that that workflow. And it's really hard to maintain that when you're changing people out. So it's something that we do look at a lot. We look at our culture and the environment that we create for our employees. We try to create a very positive, friendly culture that attracts people to the company and keeps people here. So it's a good question, and the short answer is yes, we have seen improvement in terms of employee turnover. Any questions around that?
I could probably throw in this question. I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but annual pay increase is not consistent.
Okay, so the question or statement was annual pay increase not consistent with inflation. So that is a challenging situation. If you look at inflation, it's been bad for the last 2 years. If you looked at 2022, it was like a tale of 2 years. The first half, high inflation, second half, very little, but overall for the year, it was substantial. As we look to provide pay increases, obviously, we're trying to reward our employees for the good work they do, and also to keep up with that cost of living. That has to be balanced out with what our clients are willing to pay. And so, in an industry that has tight profit margins, at least what we've experienced, our profits in 2021 were very little. I mean, practically, less than 2%. I mean, it was basically a flat year. So if you increase your largest expense, which is certainly our employee salaries, if you increase those too much and are not able to recoup those through the fees to with your clients, the math simply doesn't add up. And so it's a tough problem that a company is faced with, but the honest truth is we try to provide as big of a bump as we can while being able to work within the confines of our of the scale of pay with which our projects allow us to. So, I mentioned our profits from 2022, which sound like a lot, but from a percentage standpoint, we'll probably be somewhere around 6% in terms of net profit. So if you bump up your largest expense well above 6%, again, the math doesn't add up. So that's probably the best way I can explain it. But, you know, obviously we're all hoping that inflation continues to go down. We continue to kind of normalize, and we can get back to giving out increases that are above the inflation rate, which we have done for many years. So, is there another question? No more questions. Okay.
I think you pretty much answered it.
Okay. Okay, next question that was asked was engineering and architecture workload and backlog seems to be extremely robust right now. Do I expect that to continue? And then, there's a reference to the tech industry, which seemed to have overhired, missed some warning signs. And then there's been lots of stories in the news about the tech industry, downsizing. So again, it's another very good question. I would say, barring any unforeseen event that would cause, a major turnover in our market, something that would cause projects to stop dead in their tracks or get canceled. Barring any major event like that, we're going to be busy and healthy for the next 2 quarters and beyond, I would say. If you look at our backlogs across the company, they're all well above kind of industry standards. So that's a comforting feeling, because that's work that's booked, that's under contract, that we're working on. And so I don't see any slowdown or downturn in the immediate future. There are some red flags out there that we want to be cognizant of, and certainly the higher interest rates could potentially have an impact on especially private commercial development. And we are a player in that market. So it's altogether possible that higher interest rates could impact some markets, and we have to be in front of that. What I would say in terms of the current economy and my experience, I've been in this business for 33 years now, and I've seen other economic turndowns that have hit the AE industry and the construction industry hard, and has had a major impact on our business. We're not feeling that right now for whatever reason. I think a lot of the stimulus money that was put into play has continued to spur on development and design and construction. And we haven't even really seen the impact of the infrastructure bill from last year that could even boost our industry even more. But that doesn't mean that we can't get impacted by things like higher interest rates and what that might do to our private commercial practice. But I would say that we have really positioned ourselves well to weather the storm if there is any kind of a downturn. Over the past 10, 15 years, we have really diversified our practice. We are in so many different markets, providing so many different services, and now in so many different geographies, that if any one area of the business were to slow down or were to suffer, I feel confident that there's enough work across the board to keep people busy, keep people employed, and keep moving forward and continuing to grow. Osborne has never been a hire and fire company. We have been thoughtful and methodical about our growth, and our strategies are around strengthening the company, being a more robust, diverse practice that can handle any kind of economic downturn. So that's not to say there isn't any worry out there, but for the foreseeable future, I'm confident in where we're at. and our ability to continue to move forward. So any questions off?
No, there's a question on here, but I think you're eager to answer it.
All right. So next question was interesting. So the question was asked about why someone is being asked to attend a mandatory meeting during lunch hour and not put it on the timesheet, and then having to make up the time. And so I don't really understand the nuances behind the question or what the details are. I will try to respond to this in a kind of a broad response as it relates to time in general. So we are a professional services business, and therefore we're all salaried employees. Now, because of the nature of our business, we have to fill out a timesheet, right? So it's how we track our hours, it's how we bill our clients. So lunchtime is not really on the clock time. It's a break between morning and afternoon. So if you work a 980 program, 5 hours in the morning, you break 45 minutes to an hour for lunch, and then 4 hours in the afternoon. So typically, if there is a lunchtime meeting, whether it's a lunch and learn, or I think in this case, a mandatory meeting that a supervisor or the company is called, it's meant to provide important information to you and to be beneficial to you. So if the company is providing, or if your group is providing a lunch and learn, giving you lunch, providing you with an educational experience, that's meant for your personal growth and career development. So that time wouldn't be something that would be made up. So that's what the part of the question I don't fully understand. But I would just ask that people, consider the fact that, most professional service companies do not pay overtime. Osborne does. We value our people's time. And if there is something that's being, a meeting that's being held at lunchtime, and we're asking people to be there, we think it's important that there's a message that we want you to hear, or something that we think you can learn that would be beneficial to you. So I would just kind of, I'm not sure if that answers that question, and maybe I'll leave it open here for a second to see if there's any follow-up.
Well, just like this.
Okay. Yeah, so this meeting, again, we planned it for lunchtime, and I would not expect this is showing up on anyone's timesheet unless it goes over, over the allotted time. And I certainly didn't make this mandatory. We now have 207 people on it, so I appreciate the interest and appreciate people being here. And I'd like to think this is providing some value to you. And so yeah, I guess that's it. Good. Right. Let's see. Okay, next question. This question was about what obligations does the board have to the shareholders to disclose a breakdown of profits each year?
And this is the question we have still open. Maybe just explain how we break down the 2.5.
Okay, so so first of all, each year we close out the previous year. Like I said earlier, our accountant certifies our financial statement for the year, and every shareholder gets access to our certified financial statement. So in there, it breaks out, we've got balance sheets, we've got a statement of income, we have a section on stockholder equity, and we have cash flow statements. And in there, we break down all of our expenses, all of our revenue, and we break out how much is distributed in terms of bonus. Now, the past 2 years have been a bit of an anomaly because of what I referenced earlier, which was the federal tax credits. And then before that, there was the PPP loan that the government provided, where we were in a position where we had cash into the company, or in last year's case, we had the acknowledgement that cash would be coming into the company that we had to recognize through our financial statements and deal with from a tax basis, but was not in any way tied to our profits. So I mentioned 2021 was essentially a flat year where we didn't really, had we not had any assistance from the government, I'm pretty sure there would have been no distributions at all for last year. So when you look at last year's financial statement, it doesn't look in line based on profits. So let's talk about 2022 or any other normal year. So typically, at the end of the year, again, we come up with what is our profit. And I said earlier that for 2022, we're looking at anywhere from 2.6 to 2.8 million. Generally, as a board, we go through and we go through the process of deciding how much of our recognized profit are we going to retain in the company, reinvest in the company, and that retained earnings and reinvestment that comes in the form of buying more equipment or outfitting new offices, buying new software, anything like that is a reinvestment in the company. And then how much are we going to distribute in terms of bonus? And so generally, over the years, that's been about a 50-50 split. So about half of the profits have been retained and half have been distributed. The board is actually working right now on formalizing that, where we have each year we will have the same approach in terms of how much revenue how much earnings we retain and how much we distribute. And along with that, we are going to be putting some cash management structure in place to make sure that we're able to pay the bonuses at an appropriate time each year based on our earnings and cash flow. So if you look at the numbers from last year, let's say we're at 2.7 million. If we retain half and we distribute half, that's about 1.35 million that we would be distributing. So there's a number of people in the company, mostly folks from the manager level and above, and many project managers or market sector leaders. Part of their compensation is they're part of a bonus program where they have a bonus potential. And, if they meet their metrics and the company meets their metrics, then they get their bonus if the company makes the profits that we project. So if you total up all of those compensation, the packages, and then you also add on to that a pool of dollars that are distributed to the rest of the staff, because we want to make sure that we, have everybody benefit in the success of the company. That gets you to that 50% of your earnings really quickly. So that's generally kind of the breakdown of the profit in a normal year. And it can vary from year to year, depending on maybe what investments we have. If we think we need to retain more earnings in the company, if we think there's going to be a lot of expenditures in front of us, that 50-50 split can go, a little bit one way or the other. But generally, that's how we do it. From a shareholder standpoint, the total number that's distributed is in that financial statement, so it's out there for everybody to see. Any follow-up questions?
If this is a follow-up question or not, will the 2022 document be available on the bridge?
Not sure what document.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to keep moving.
Financial statement.
Okay, so the financial statement won't be posted on the bridge. You have to be a shareholder to get that. But every shareholder is given the financial statements. It's just how a corporation works. We can't put that out there as public information, but it is given to all shareholders. I think I need to pick up the pace on this, or else we're going to run long. So, okay. So I'll try to get through. Those are some of the more difficult questions, I think. So hopefully the rest goes fairly quickly. There was a question about how do we arrive at when the floating holiday is selected. So Osborne hasn't always offered that floating holiday. It's something probably in the last 10 years or so that we've added. It really came around the fact that when Christmas or 4th of July falls on a Tuesday or a Thursday, those days before or after tend to be really inefficient days. So a lot of people, will take a vacation day, or, the people that are here, it's just not a lot happening. So we started adding the floating holiday to give that one more day, give our employees, another 4-day weekend throughout the year. Every now and then, maybe 20% of the time, Christmas or 4th of July do not fall on a Tuesday or a Thursday. They're on a Monday or Friday or on the weekend. And then we have to make a decision what to do with that floating holiday. And it's only happened a couple times. In general, our approach has been, there's a long gap between January 1st and Memorial Day where there's no holidays for people to have off. So we try to pick something around spring break time. We look at, what schools are off, and we try to align that with a day when most schools are off so people can have an extra day with their kids. Going forward, I'm not sure when the next year is that scenario will come into existence, but we'll reevaluate at that time how we pick that floating holiday. But usually, like this year, where 4th of July is on a Tuesday, it just makes common sense to make it on the Monday before, to give everyone that 4-day weekend and people aren't spending a vacation day on it. So, let's see. There was a question about our dress code and why it isn't being followed. Again, this is one I don't really understand all the nuances behind the question. I did ask our HR department, and they said there hasn't been a complaint about dress code in over a year. So again, I'm not sure exactly what the issue is, but I would just say this, if you see something that is offensive to you, or you see a policy that's clearly being violated, if you're not comfortable addressing that person directly, you should feel comfortable either going to your supervisor or going to HR and voicing your complaint. And I will say this, a lot of times people assume that the leadership of the company is aware of, a policy not being followed. But if it's not brought forward, it's really hard to be aware of all those things. So I would just say, if something's bothering you, speak up. And when someone is violating a policy, or if there's a chronic issue, I just want to assure everybody that we do address those situations and we will meet with those people. That doesn't mean that that meeting is public or that there's a follow-up with the person who filed a complaint, but I can assure you that we do address each situation based on the seriousness of the situation. So.
Doug, before you move on from
Yeah.
that, I just want to let you know, there is just a follow-up comment pushing for making the floating holiday various to
Very well.
the.
Okay. Yeah, so again, the follow-up question on the floating holiday. The next time that comes up, we will relook at how we designate the floating holiday, and there'll be more to come on that later. So next question, I've had this asked a couple times. It's about our 401k match, and is it a 1% match of the salary, or is it 1% match of the person's contribution? We were not real thrilled with how our broker presented the 401k match in the open enrollment. We didn't think they did a very good job. They were flat out wrong about some of it. But let me clarify right now that it is a 1% match of salary. So if a person puts in 1% of their salary over the course of the year into their 401k, at the end of the year, if you're still with the company, Osborne will match that 1%. So it's a 1% of your salary, not 1% of your contribution. So this is in response to people's request to have a 401k match. And, again, over the years, we've always had our stock bonus program, but this is our way of gradually getting into a 401k match, and we'll see how it goes and then move forward with that. But I did want to clarify it's 1% of salary.
And our plan administrator reported it wrong, not the book.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. The plan administrator was the person who did not explain it. Did we lose? Okay. We're still good? Okay. Okay, next question. Osborne has 134 unique job titles for 303 people per the Bridge directory. Are there plans to implement a numbered tier structure often seen in the industry, such as engineer 1, 2, 3, senior architect 1, 2, 3, senior architect? So really this question is mixing up titles and billing labor categories. So everybody in the company has a billing rate category, such as an engineer 1, 2, or 3, or project manager or director, what have you. And that's based on your level of experience, your degree of expertise, and what we can bill you out at. So everybody has that labor designation. Titles are a little bit different. And while certainly people have titles that describe a person's role in the company, a lot of titles are subjective and more outwardly facing. So it could be that a person, is part of their job responsibilities, they're selling a certain service that we provide. It's important for that person to have a title such as an associate director or a director title when they're out in the market selling that service, so that they basically are, their title is commensurate with their ability to speak to our expertise and our ability to deliver that service. So I just want to clarify, it's the titles and the labor rate categories are two different things. And I understand there are a lot of titles out there. It's partly because we try to accommodate what people feel they need to get their job done. So I hope that explains that particular issue. Next question. What resources are being devoted to advancing the technical skills of the firm? Are there specific goals for technical skill improvements? So I've been working with Rachel in formalizing a career development program that we're focusing on the 0 to 5 year category of a person's career coming into this industry. The idea is that the program would provide overall business training in terms of how the AE business works, and specifically how are things done at Osborne, along with the technical training that folks need to advance in those crucial early years of their career. And so the thought process behind it is, by the time you get to your 5th year, then we can talk about larger career path opportunities. But that technical training side is largely being handled within each discipline. So we've recently launched these discipline committees for several different areas, including technical training. So each discipline has a committee made up of folks from different offices or geographies or divisions that are working on putting together their training curriculum for their staff. And so this is something we hope to really formalize and launch in 2023. Last year, towards the end of the year, we did launch a pilot program for a handful of senior folks on the career development side, which was more of a kind of a mentoring program, teaming them up with one or more other senior mentors to help guide their career development. Or, this is something we want to see how it plays out over the course of the year. And if it's successful, we're going to expand that to include more people. But I do recognize that we need to have a more structured career development training program. And it's something, like I said, I'm working with Rachel and HR on to get that in place this year. So there'll be more to come on that. And hopefully next year, you'll be able to understand the answer to that question much better. There was a question about our work policy, if we plan on amending the current work policy, which was put in place during COVID. It's a good question. The question around work schedules really has not come up in a long time. Things have been kind of working smoothly as is, but I would say that it's probably something that the board will revisit and at some point, put something that's more formal or permanent in place. At the moment, it's not causing any issues. People seem to be working with their supervisors and directors and division heads to get their schedules set up, and it has been working smoothly. But you're right. Right now, we have an interim policy, and we need to probably move off of that in the near future. So again, more to come on that moving forward. Someone had not really a question, but a comment. Now that our beloved Leroy is gone, just a reminder about office cleanliness. This applies to the Cleveland office, but I'm sure it goes for everyone in every one of our neighborhood offices. But please keep the kitchens clean. Most people are doing a good job. And this person just wanted me to reiterate that message. So I'm gladly passing that on. Okay. Next question. Another one about our offices. As our neighborhood offices begin to grow, will admins be hired for those offices? This is another good question, and it's really a case-by-case basis. As each office matures and grows, it's going to have its own support needs. And certainly offices reach a point of critical mass where you have to have support staff in place to help, to just help with basic operation functions within the office. And it doesn't just stop with administrative staff. Currently, we have, for example, in Florida, we have an IT person down there now. We have a marketing person in Florida. So there is no formula that says, okay, when we reach this number of people, we're going to add an administrative person, but it is something that is talked about regularly as these offices mature in terms of what is needed to support that office. So I guess the root of the question is, will admins be hired? My answer would be, it depends. It depends how big the offices grow and what the needs of those offices are. There were a couple questions about summer events and would like to have more summer events. Again, I think this came from Cleveland because it references our family picnic, which was a Friday night Guardians game last year. We definitely want to get our folks together for social celebrations. There is a social committee that's made up of folks from the various neighborhoods, and I think each neighborhood has their own like subcommittees. And really each neighborhood office is in charge of their own social events. But we do hope to have more events this year, and maybe we'll have a few smaller events throughout the summer here in Cleveland as opposed to one big event. As far as the timing, whether it's a Friday night or a Sunday afternoon, it's hard to, when you get this many people, to have something that works out for everybody. But we do our best, and something will continue. Got one last question, and this is in regards to kind of ongoing legal costs the company's been incurring for the last couple of years. Without getting into too many specifics, we have had a lot of legal costs. Our biggest issue, there is a light at the end of that particular tunnel, and it's something that could be completely cleared up in the next few weeks. Hopeful that that's the case. But I will say that, the bigger we get, the more likely it is that the company is going to be drawn into some legal issues. It's just the nature of a larger growing company. And most of the legal issues we've had to deal with, maybe not on a size standpoint, but from a quantity standpoint, has been around dealing with perceived errors or omissions. And so really where we have the most control over minimizing our legal exposure is through following our quality system, adhering to the practices that are in our quality assurance manual, making sure every project is properly coordinated and checked. If we do our job of making sure we're putting out quality work, we limit the exposure of risk to the company. And, believe me, everybody makes mistakes. We all do. It's going to happen. We're going to miss things on projects, but the more diligent we are about following our quality system, the better off we'll be in the long run, and the more we can avoid, any large claims that might hit us down the road. So that is the last question I have. It is 1 o'clock, and I want to give people a chance to ask any other questions you might have right now. So anything?
We don't have anything. Omar suggests for the Cleveland office only encourage corporate change.
Okay, if people did not hear that, Omar is encouraging the folks in Cleveland to embrace the corporate challenge this year. It should be a fun time competing in a bunch of events and showing the whole Cleveland community that Osborne is the best company in town. Other questions? Okay, I think that's it. I hope you all found some value in this. If this format is something that you like, I'd like to hear back from you. I've tried to be as open and honest and answer all the questions that I get. And so, again, I hope you found this worthwhile, and you all take care, and I look forward to talking next time. Thank you all very much.